Thank you for that precious gift. The day that I heard that Tom Duggan had passed was the day that I knew that I had lost a small piece of my heart. The moment I realized that Tom was no longer with us, I discovered that one of the most important people in my life was gone forever. Tears came to my eyes. For how do you share a tribute to one who was a family friend for 55 years? How do you repay the beautiful, sacred gift of mentorship? The friendship between the Duggans and the Steyers began in 1964 in Milford, Connecticut. Tom and Gail had just returned from that time in Thailand. Tom had been called as the pastor of the Seaside Presbyterian Church. I had just graduated from Union Theological Seminary, starting my first ministry as a youth minister. Once Gail and my wife Brenda met, our two families became very, very close. We had two daughters, Gretchen and Heather. They had a son and a daughter, Chris and Frida. When I first started in ministry, I thought I knew what I was doing. I had a theological degree. I'd worked as a seminarian in a UCC church on Long Island. I was ready for ministry. But then came Sunday night with the youth group. After two disastrous Sundays, I quickly turned to Tom and said, "What do I do?" Well, he had lots and lots of wonderful ideas of what to do with an overactive youth group. And then Tom heard one of my first sermons. Oh. Did he have even many more suggestions on how I might improve? 10 years later, Tom advised me to apply for the Doctorate of Ministry program at Princeton Theological Seminary, where he had studied and earned his Doctorate of Ministry degree. Tom was an integral part of our family. When our youngest daughter, Heather, was born, Tom was there, present at her baptism. When older daughter Gretchen finished her junior year in Greece and came to Paris, Tom and Gail found her an au pair job for the summer. A few years later, when Heather and her boyfriend John were visiting the American church in Paris, they got engaged there. And then Tom came to Greenwich, Connecticut to officiate at their wedding. Going back a little bit in time, my first trip to the West Coast, Tom was pastor in the Hayward Presbyterian Church at that point. We came and Tom decided he would introduce us to San Francisco. So the four Steyers and four Duggans all piled in Tom's VW bus. We bounced along the streets there in San Francisco, wide-eyed at the cable cars, Giardelli Square and the Golden Gate Bridge. And then on Sunday, he took us to Glide Memorial Methodist Church. We had never experienced such enthusiastic worship. The singing and dancing in the aisles. The minister, of course, was the wonderful Cecil Williams. So we danced in the aisles with everybody else. But when the Duggans moved to the continent, the Steyers soon began to go to visit them in The Hague and Paris. In Paris, the church there had a tradition of a Thanksgiving meal to honor the American expats that enjoyed that. It seems that the French provided turkeys, but they didn't have cranberry sauce or other kinds of important ingredients for the Thanksgiving meal, so the Steyer suitcases were loaded with what they needed. One year in Paris, we arrived just after the bombing of the building next door. Some sort of conflict was going on. Very strong security in the neighborhood and outside of the church. But that wasn't the only time of high drama when we visited them in Paris. I remember standing in their living room and looking out the window and hearing a huge protest group talking about what was going on in Bosnia. Another trip, there was the farmers and their tractors going down the street. Some kind of farm strike was happening. Never dull to visit the Duggans in Paris. But on quieter mornings, we enjoyed coffee and baguettes at a nearby cafe. And Tom, as you may know or not know, loved playing pinball. He was almost an expert at that. Frida said, when they had the farewell party for them at the church in Paris, there was a pop song called Pinball Music, and that was played at that particular time to bid him farewell. But when he wasn't playing pinball, he was reading the international edition of the New York Herald Tribune and engaging us in conversation about the day's headlines. It was a wonderful trip to Normandy with the Duggans. Some years later, their daughter Frida was teaching English in Japan. She returned to the States. She came to live with us in Connecticut. We grew especially close to her at that period. Then in the late 1990s, Brenda and I came here on a sabbatical month, thinking we might like to move here at some time. And that created many wonderful adventures with Tom and Gail. We toured the countryside to visit estates, museums, libraries, attend plays. Gail always had some special place for us to see. And then one particularly wonderful evening, they arranged for Brenda and me to be present in a private home here on the campus, where David Napier was playing the piano. We had known Davy in New Haven when he was at Yale Divinity School. It was such an honor to spend time with him there. Tom and Gail arranged for Brenda and I and my brother and his wife Pam to fulfill one of our lifelong dreams and come to the Rose Bowl Parade. They got us seats and tickets at the Presbyterian Church in Pasadena. The day before the parade, we visited all the flowering of several of the floats. Beautiful day. The next morning, we arrived at the Presbyterian Church. It's raining cats and dogs. My sister-in-law sat there in the rain for the entire parade, smiling all the time. I remember Tom. Tom is the proud father at Cindy and Mike's wedding here in Claremont. Brenda and I enjoyed co-celebrating that wonderful event. And then sadness came when Brenda died suddenly in 2013. Tom and Gail attended her memorial service in Boulder, supported our family. So today, with Gretchen and Heather, I am here to support them as they had given us support. Godspeed to my wonderful, lifelong friend, Tom Duggan.
Thank you for that. Good afternoon. Aloha, as they would say back in Hawaii. I met the Reverend Tom Duggan one bright and clear Sunday morning in the summer of 1997. Having just graduated from college and moved to Thailand for work, I was checking out a church close to my apartment, the International Church of Bangkok. He came up right away to say hello. He introduced me to his wife, Gail, and he introduced me to some of the other young adults in the congregation. He really made me feel welcome. So after a few Sundays, I found myself soon serving as an occasional usher. Then I was teaching Sunday school. I served on a church council. And one Sunday, he asked me to deliver a sermon. We talk often, and like many of the great friendships in our lives, we just hit it off. We clicked. My then girlfriend, now wife, Aya, moved to Bangkok, and Tom and Gail took us in, hosting us in their home, inviting us out to meals or some kind of church event. And we kept in touch even after we all left Bangkok. Tom officiated Aya's and my wedding, delivering a meaningful and memorable homily. And he and Gail visited us as we moved from New Haven, Connecticut, to Madison, Wisconsin, to Mountain View, California, and then eventually settling in Honolulu, Hawaii. I think Tom and Gail would have dropped in for a visit even if we had ended up in Boise, Idaho, Kalamazoo, Michigan. But I don't think either of them minded too much that when coming to see our family, they'd also see the beaches of Waikiki. I remember chatting with Tom one day over the phone and offhandedly remarking how it was unseasonably chilly in Honolulu, which means it was probably in the high 60s or so. And he said to me, "Listen, Ehito, take it from me, take it from someone who's lived in Paris for 15 years. It doesn't matter how chilly it gets in Hawaii. You're not going to get a whole lot of sympathy for someone who's living their life in paradise." Tom had a sharp mind, a dry wit, a big heart, and a love for telling stories. He loved his family, and I heard stories how growing up, his son's French was so good, it even had French people thinking that he was French, as I think we noticed today. How his daughter lived and taught in Japan, and with a wig, had Japanese people fooled thinking she was Japanese. He talked of a grandson who could pretty much run the farmer's market all by himself when he was a young man. And another grandson who apparently loved all things sports and school. And of course, he had Gail, who lived those stories with him and who could probably complete his sentences and even know what he was going to say before he did. The Tom I knew had a light and easygoing air about him that left him chuckling about the things that might have left the rest of us fuming or upset. He was a great preacher, not so much fire and brimstone, but just calm, thoughtful, illuminating, incisive. There was something very reassuring about Tom. If there was one thing that tied all his varied stories together, maybe it was a sense that everything was going to be okay. Was he stuck in traffic in Bangkok on Christmas Eve and forced to ride on the back of a motorcycle taxi in his church robes, weaving between cars all the way to get to the service? It was okay. The Christmas Eve service went off without a hitch. Did he take an 8-hour-long walking tour of Kyoto in the summer heat of the 1950s, led by an enthusiastic young Japanese student wanting to practice his English, and then promptly did he fall asleep of exhaustion back at the hotel? It was okay. He made his connecting flight to Chiang Mai. Barely. Was he in declining health? And did he have a diagnosis of advanced lymphoma? It was okay. He had lived a full and meaningful life. He lived a life serving others. He took what Robert Frost called that road less traveled. He wrote his own story and left his own mark on the world. And he did all this even as he recognized that he was a part of something much bigger than himself. And he left this world surrounded by his friends and with his loving family. A full and meaningful life indeed. For what more could anyone ask for? Amen.
Two verses of the hymn in whatever language pleases you.